The announcement came too late. Final departure call for docking ring 7. Shuttle 42C preparing for launch. I was already running. Tool case in one hand. Half-eaten protein bar in the other. Station traffic moving like a panicked herd through the orbital concourse of Ardent Prime. I wasn't supposed to be late. Cargo techs aren't supposed to be late. But when a thermal seal bursts on Deck C and your supervisor insists it's just a minor flare, you end up waist-deep in coolant and sprinting through a space station that smells like ozone and burnt wiring. Docking ring 7 split into 3 sub-bays. 7A, 7B, 7C. I didn't look up. I just ran toward the only shuttle still cycling atmospheric locks. The ramp was open. The hull was sleek. Black alloy with faint ember-red lines along the plating. Nice civilian paint job, I thought. Fancy. I bolted up the ramp just as the station's gravity shifted slightly, launch sequence engaging. The doors sealed behind me with a heavy, resonant thud. Not the light hydraulic hiss of a civilian shuttle. A deep, metallic lock. The air inside felt warmer, thicker. I paused halfway down the entry corridor. Civilian transports smell like recycled oxygen and cheap insulation foam. This smelled like heated metal. And something faintly sharp, like sparks after welding. The interior lighting glowed amber instead of sterile white. The walls weren't smooth paneling, they were lead, segmented plating with subtle heat lines pulsing beneath the surface. Okay. That was different. I walked farther in. No rows of passenger seating. No cargo straps. No chatter. Just a long corridor leading toward what looked suspiciously like a command deck. My stomach tightened. The ship vibrated, not gently. Powerful engines humming beneath my boots. I checked my wrist pad. No shuttle designation matched this hull signature. No civilian registry ID blinking in the corner of my display. Instead, unlisted military-grade energy output. My throat went dry. The corridor opened into a wide central chamber. And that's when they saw me. 3 figures stood near a tactical holomap. Tall. Broad-shouldered. Scaled. Not armor plating. Actual scales. Dark crimson, deep bronze, and midnight black. They wore fitted combat uniforms reinforced at the shoulders and forearms. And their eyes. Bright gold. Vertical pupils narrowing as they turned toward me in perfect unison. The holomap flickered between them, casting sharp shadows across sharp cheekbones and ridged horns sweeping back from their temples. One of them blinked slowly. "Identify yourself," she said. Her voice wasn't shouted. It didn't need to be. It carried heat. Not metaphorically. The air actually warmed when she spoke. I lifted both hands automatically. "Cargo tech," I said. "Station transfer. Shuttle 42C." The bronze-scaled one tilted her head slightly. "This is not Shuttle 42C." No kidding. The ship jolted. Not turbulence. Transition. The faint distortion ripple of hyperspace engagement vibrated through the deck. My stomach dropped. "You're joking," I breathed. The crimson-scaled officer tapped something on her wrist console. "Dock separation confirmed. Jump sequence complete." Complete. Complete. We were already in hyperspace. I swallowed hard. "Okay," I said slowly. "So we turn around." The black-scaled one gave a low, amused exhale. "We are a frontier strike cruiser." Strike cruiser. That explained the heat. And the military-grade reactor signature. And the fact that I was currently standing on what was very much not public transit. Footsteps echoed from the far end of the chamber. Heavy. Measured. The 3 officers straightened instantly. Not rigid. But respectful. The air shifted again. Warmer. I turned. She was taller than the others. Her scales were burnished gold along the throat and collar, fading into deep obsidian along her shoulders. Her horns curved back like polished onyx blades. Uniform immaculate. Presence overwhelming. Her eyes locked onto me. And I understood, instinctively, that this was not someone who ever rushed. "Report," she said. The crimson officer gestured toward me. Unidentified human boarded during final docking sequence. No matching crew assignment. The captain's gaze never left my face. Her pupils narrowed slightly. "You are not my mechanic," she said calmly. It wasn't a question. I swallowed again. "No," I admitted. "I am not." Silence stretched. The hum of the engines deepened. The captain stepped closer. Close enough that I could see faint ember-like veins glowing subtly beneath her scales. "You boarded a military vessel without clearance," she said. "Accidentally," I replied quickly. A faint pause. One horn ridge lifted. Explain. I was late, I said. Docking rings look identical when you're sprinting. The black-scaled officer made a quiet sound that might have been laughter. The captain studied me for several long seconds. Then she extended one clawed finger toward the holomap. A schematic of the ship rotated into view. You are currently 3 light minutes into hyperspace transition, she said evenly. There is no turning around. My brain processed that slowly. 3 light minutes. Already. I forced a thin smile. So, I said carefully, you drop me off at the next station. The crimson officer glanced at the captain. The captain's lips curved slightly. Not friendly. Not hostile. Curious. That, she said, depends. On what? She took one final step forward. The heat radiating from her scales was unmistakable now. On whether you are useful. And somewhere deep within the ship, something heavy shifted. Not mechanical. Organic. The deck vibrated under my boots. The captain's eyes flicked briefly toward the ceiling. Then back to me. You boarded the wrong starship, human, she said softly. And now, her gaze sharpened. We will see if that was a mistake. The vibration in the deck wasn't turbulence. It was strain. I didn't know how I knew that. But I'd worked long enough around overheating thermal regulators to recognize when a system was pushing beyond its comfort zone. The dragon woman captain's eyes shifted slightly toward the ceiling again. Not worried. Calculating. Status, she said. The bronze-scaled officer's fingers moved across the holomap interface. Reactor output fluctuating at 4.7% above optimal for sustained jump. Cause? Thermal feedback in the secondary coil array. The captain's jaw tightened slightly. Compensate. We are compensating. The deck shuddered. This time harder. I swallowed. Okay, I said carefully, that didn't sound like compensation. 3 sets of golden eyes snapped toward me. The crimson-scaled officer narrowed her gaze. You will remain silent. I held up my hands again. Right. Silent. Got it. Another tremor rippled through the hull. This one carried heat with it. The air in the chamber grew noticeably warmer. A faint metallic scent crept in, hot alloy under stress. I stepped backward instinctively. Then paused. The heat wasn't spreading evenly. It was concentrating. Toward the rear starboard quadrant. The captain noticed my shift in posture. You perceive something, she said flatly. I hesitated. You don't correct a strike cruiser captain on her own ship. Especially when she has claws and a stare that could melt through plating. But the next tremor came sharper. The bronze officer swore under her breath. Core temperature spike at 6% above containment threshold. Engage additional cooling, the captain ordered. We are at maximum coolant dispersion. I stared at the holomap. The schematic rotated slowly. The secondary thermal coil array pulsed red. And I felt something very familiar. Not panic. Recognition. That's not a coolant problem, I heard myself say. Silence. The captain's gaze slid back to me. You will clarify. I took a breath. Your coil array is misaligned. The black-scaled officer gave a low, warning sound. You have not seen our reactor schematics. I don't need to, I said. Another tremor. The red glow on the holomap intensified. Your core runs hotter than most human designs, I continued, forcing my voice steady. You're bleeding excess heat through the secondary coil, but the dispersion pattern is uneven. It's feeding back into itself. The bronze officer's eyes flicked to her console. That is not possible. It is if your coil timing is off by half a second. The captain took a slow step closer to me. Her presence pressed against my ribs like gravity. You are a cargo technician, she said. Yes. You are not a reactor engineer. No. Yet you are diagnosing my core. I glanced at the holomap again. The red pulse peaked. The deck lurched violently. That did it. I moved. Not dramatically. Just 3 quick steps toward the nearest auxiliary console. The black-scaled officer shifted instantly, blocking my path. You will not touch that. If you don't retime your coil, I said quickly, you're going to overheat your jump envelope. The captain didn't blink. Explain in 5 words or fewer. I swallowed. Your ship breathes like you. A pause. All 3 officers stiffened slightly. The captain's pupils narrowed. Elaborate. Your reactor runs in thermal surges, I said, gesturing at the holomap. It spikes, then stabilizes. Like a pulse. The bronze officer frowned. That is intentional. Right. But your secondary coil isn't syncing with the spike. It's lagging. The tremor hit again. Harder. Warning lights flared amber. Core at 8% above threshold, the bronze officer said tightly. The captain's gaze shifted between me and the console. Stand aside, she told her officer. The black-scaled woman hesitated. Then stepped away. I moved to the console. My hands hovered over the interface. Not human standard. Different layout. Different command structure. But heat regulation logic was universal. Your coolant dispersal timing, I said, scanning the schematic, it's reactive. It kicks in after the spike. That is the design. That's the problem. I tapped into the manual override. The bronze officer hissed softly. Unauthorized input. Let him, the captain said. My fingers moved quickly. I adjusted the coil timing offset. Half a second earlier. Then reduced the peak tolerance by 3%. Rerouting preemptive coolant dispersion, I muttered. The console flashed warning red. Then recalibrated. The holomap flickered. The red glow dimmed slightly. The deck vibration softened. Core temperature dropping, the bronze officer said, disbelief creeping into her voice. 6%. I exhaled slowly. Now your coil is breathing with the spike, I said. The captain watched the readings without expression. The hum of the engine steadied. The oppressive heat in the chamber eased. 5%. 4. The bronze officer looked at me like I'd just rewritten physics. The black-scaled one folded her arms slowly. Stabilization achieved. The silence that followed was heavier than the tremors had been. I stepped back from the console. Your design isn't bad, I said carefully. It's just aggressive. The captain's head tilted slightly. Define aggressive. It assumes you can overpower the heat. The bronze officer bristled. We can. Yeah, I said. But you don't have to. Another pause. The captain's gaze sharpened. You altered our core timing without authorization. Yes. You prevented a thermal escalation. Yes. You implied our engineering relies too heavily on force. I winced. Yes. A faint smile touched one corner of her mouth. Interesting. The holomap shifted to calm blue. The engine hum deepened into a smooth, steady resonance. The captain stepped closer until she was directly in front of me. You boarded my ship by mistake, she said quietly. Yes. You are unarmed. Yes. You are physically unimposing. That one stung. Yes. And yet, she continued, you corrected a system flaw my crew has tolerated for 3 cycles. I blinked. You knew? The bronze officer crossed her arms. It was within operational limits. Operational isn't optimal, I muttered. The captain's golden eyes held mine. You demanded to be returned to port, she said. Correct. She studied me for a long moment. Then she turned toward her officers. Logged the coil adjustment. The crimson officer hesitated. Under whose authorization? The captain looked back at me. Under mine. She turned fully toward the bridge. You will remain aboard until next port, she said calmly. Relief flickered in my chest. Good. She glanced over her shoulder. I did not say you would disembark. My relief vanished. You stabilized my ship, she continued. You perceive its strain. Her gaze lingered on the console. You understand how it breathes. I swallowed. Breathing is kind of important. She stepped closer once more. Close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from her scales again. You boarded the wrong starship, she said softly. Yes. Her eyes gleamed faintly. But perhaps, she added, we boarded the right human. I did not sleep. Mostly because hyperspace hum on a Dragon Woman strike cruiser feels less like background noise and more like sitting inside a living furnace that occasionally flexes its muscles. And partly because I had just adjusted a military reactor core with 0 clearance and a captain who looked at problems like prey. I stood in engineering. Not restrained. Not escorted. Just watched. The bronze-scaled officer, Chief Thermal, stood across the chamber with her arms folded, tail flicking slowly behind her. You may observe, she said. That's generous, I replied. Her golden eyes narrowed slightly. This is not trust. Understood. The engine room was nothing like human systems. Our reactors are layered in modular redundancy. Dragon tech? It was elegant. Massive central core chamber with ribbed alloy structures arcing outward like the inside of a colossal lung. The core pulsed faintly. Not erratic now. Steady. It did look like breathing. Heat shimmer moved in waves across the chamber walls. You run surge pattern energy instead of steady flow, I said, walking slowly around the perimeter. It allows for burst capacity, the chief replied. Yeah, I muttered. And strain accumulation. She made a quiet sound of irritation. You assume weakness where there is none. I assume stress where it doesn't need to exist. That earned me a sharp look. Behind us, the captain entered without announcement. The air warmed slightly. You have further analysis, she said. It wasn't a question. I hesitated. This was the part where humans usually get themselves into trouble. You don't build for failure, I said carefully. The chief bristled. We do not plan to fail. Exactly. The captain's eyes sharpened with interest. Continue. You design systems assuming maximum resilience, I explained. Your ships can endure incredible stress. But when they hit threshold, they hit it hard. The chief stepped closer. Our hull integrity exceeds human fleet standards by 32%. I'm not talking about hull integrity, I said. I'm talking about fatigue. The captain tilted her head slightly. Clarify. I pointed at the coil array. You compensate with strength. Humans compensate with tolerance. The chief crossed her arms tighter. Tolerance implies weakness. No, I said. It implies flexibility. The core pulsed again. This time smoother than before. You've been fighting your own heat, I continued. Instead of moving with it. The chief stared at the data readouts. Your adjustment has reduced thermal oscillation variance by 18%. She didn't sound pleased. She sounded unsettled. The captain stepped beside me. You are not an engineer, she said again. No. You are not military. No. You are not physically formidable. Okay, that one again. Correct. And yet you diagnose structural strain in systems built beyond your species standard. I shrugged slightly. Humans break stuff a lot. The chief blinked. Deliberately? Not always, I said. But enough that we learn to design for it. The captain's gaze flicked to the core. You expect failure. We expect stress, I corrected. So we build space for it. Silence settled over the engine room. The captain studied the pulse rhythm. You propose further modifications, she said. Yes. The chief's head snapped toward me. You will not reconfigure additional systems. I'm not suggesting permanent changes, I said quickly. Just damping buffers. Explain. You have a surge cycle every 6 minutes during sustained jump, I said. Add a micro-delay variance in coolant dispersal on alternating cycles. Let the system reset without pushing peak output. The chief's eyes narrowed. That reduces theoretical burst power. By 1%. The captain's gaze sharpened. 1% is significant. Not if you stop overheating during extended engagements, I replied. The engine room went quiet. The captain turned toward the chief. Run simulation. The chief hesitated. Then complied. Holographic projections flared to life above the core. The system ran through jump cycle simulation. Surge. Stabilize. Surge. Micro-delay compensation engaged. The thermal curve smoothed visibly. Peak output dipped slightly. Long-term stress index dropped by 23%. The chief stared at the data. That is. She didn't finish. Efficient. I offered. She gave me a look that suggested she did not enjoy agreeing. The captain watched the projection in silence. Implement, she said finally. The chief stiffened. Captain. Implement. The command carried finality. The chief turned to the console and executed the changes. The core pulsed again. Smoother. Quieter. Like a breath taken without tension. The captain stepped closer to me. You improve my ship, she said. Your ship was already impressive. She ignored that. You identify strain before failure. Occupational hazard, I muttered. The chief folded her arms again, but less rigidly this time. You move through our systems as though you belong, she said. I blinked. I absolutely do not belong here. The captain studied me for a long moment. Belonging is not defined by intention, she said. It is defined by effect. The engine hum resonated gently through the chamber. No tremor. No spike. Just steady power. The chief glanced at the readouts again. Efficiency increase sustained, she said reluctantly. The captain's eyes returned to me. You demanded transfer at next port. Yes. She held my gaze. That was before. A faint, almost amused curve touched her mouth. You may remain. I blinked. I'm sorry? You may remain aboard. That wasn't an option. Her smile sharpened. It is now. I stared at her. I didn't sign up for this. She stepped closer, close enough that I could see the faint ember-like glow beneath her throat scales. You boarded my ship, she said quietly. You stabilized my core. You see it strain. Her golden eyes locked onto mine. And my crew is calmer with you present. I opened my mouth. Closed it again. That hadn't even occurred to me. The chief glanced at me sideways. Engine fluctuations decrease when you enter the chamber, she admitted. That's not possible, I said. It is measurable. The captain's voice softened slightly. You do not challenge us. No. You do not posture. No. You do not fear us. I hesitated. I do, I admitted. The chief gave a faint huff. But you remain steady, the captain said. That, she added, is rare. The engine room hummed quietly. The strike cruiser felt different now. Less strained. Less sharp. The captain turned toward the exit. We continue to Frontier Sector Gamma, she said. Then she looked back at me. You will accompany engineering. I exhaled slowly. I boarded the wrong ship. Her golden eyes gleamed. Yes. She paused. And yet, you fit. The next port was a mining outpost orbiting a dying blue star. Ugly rock. Functional docks. The kind of place no one lingered unless they were paid to. Which meant it was perfect. As soon as we dropped from hyperspace, smoothly, I noticed, I packed my tool case. Transfer paperwork. I asked the chief of thermal. She didn't look up from the console. Denied. I blinked. I haven't filed it yet. It has been pre-denied. That's not how paperwork works. She gave me a sideways look. It does here. I found the captain on the observation deck, staring out at the glowing star. You can drop me here, I said. Her reflection in the viewport didn't move. You intend to leave? Yes. You do not enjoy service. I accidentally joined your warship, I said. That's not the same as enlistment. She turned slowly. You stabilized our core. For one jump. 3, she corrected. I paused. 3. She stepped closer. We have maintained improved thermal efficiency for 3 consecutive cycles. Good, I said. That means you don't need me. She studied me. That assumption is incorrect. Before I could respond, the deck vibrated. Not violently. Not dangerously. Just enough. I recognized it instantly. The captain's eyes flicked toward the ceiling. Status, she called. The chief's voice crackled over the intercom. Minor flux in tertiary coolant exchange. I frowned. That wasn't happening before. It was, the captain said calmly. We compensated. The vibration steadied as I moved instinctively toward the nearest console. I adjusted the timing buffer slightly. The hum evened out. Silence. The captain watched the change. You did not hesitate, she observed. It's small. You noticed. I stepped back. That doesn't mean I belong here. The captain's gaze sharpened. You perceive strain before my crew does. That's because I look for it. My crew looks for threat. I hesitated. That's different. Yes. She folded her arms behind her back. You see vulnerability. And that's a problem? For us? She asked. No. She stepped closer. You steady my ship. I let out a small, disbelieving laugh. I tweak coolant timing. You steady my crew. That made me pause. That's dramatic. Is it? She tapped her wrist console. A projection appeared between us. Crew biometric readings from the last 3 hyperspace cycles. Stress levels. Reaction spikes. Aggression indicators. All trending downward. That's because your core isn't overheating anymore, I said. Partially. She zoomed the data. The decline began when you boarded. I frowned. That's correlation. Dragon crews bond through combat, she said evenly. Through dominance displays. Through shared fire. She stepped closer. You bond through cooperation. That's a generalization. Is it inaccurate? I didn't answer. She didn't need me to. When you enter engineering, she continued, thermal spikes decrease. That's mechanical. When you walk the corridors, aggression markers dip. That's not mechanical. No. The deck trembled again. A tiny fluctuation. Barely noticeable. Except I noticed. I adjusted the nearby panel again. The hum smoothed out. The captain's eyes never left me. You do not challenge us, she said. You do not compete. You do not attempt to dominate. I shrugged. That would go poorly. She almost smiled. And so my crew does not respond with defensive posture. I swallowed. That's not intentional. It does not need to be. A sharp tone echoed across the bridge. Captain, the chief called. External sensor contact. The holomap flared to life. 3 pirate vessels sliding out from behind the mining ring. Small. Fast. Armed. The captain's eyes burned brighter. Battle stations. The crew moved instantly. Heat rose. Energy surged. I felt it in the deck before the numbers confirmed it. The core spiked. Adrenaline. Aggression. Combat surge. The vibration built faster this time. The old pattern threatening to return. I moved without thinking. Shift the secondary coil timing, I called out. The chief didn't argue. She executed the adjustment. The surge stabilized just enough. The pirate ships opened fire. The strike cruiser responded. The captain stepped forward, issuing commands in a voice that felt like flame-given language. The ship fired. The first pirate vessel disintegrated. The second attempted evasive maneuvers. The core surged again under weapon output. I rerouted coolant preemptively. The spike flattened. The third pirate tried to flee. Our engines burned brighter. But they didn't strain. We outpaced them. Clean. Controlled. Over in less than 4 minutes. Silence returned to the bridge. No overheating. No warning lights. Just steady hum. The captain turned slowly toward me. You were preparing to leave, she said. Yes. You would have disembarked at this port. Yes. She stepped closer. And my ship would have returned to its prior strain. I opened my mouth. Closed it. Because she wasn't wrong. She studied me for a long moment. Strength is not always force, she said. It is not always fire. Her golden eyes held mine. Sometimes it is the presence that prevents both. I looked around the bridge. The crew was watching. Not with hostility. Not with dominance. With something closer to acknowledgement. You don't need me, I said quietly. The chief of thermal spoke for the first time without irritation in her voice. We do. The captain stepped into my space. Close enough that the warmth from her scales brushed my skin. You boarded my ship by mistake, she said. Yes. You stabilized my core. Yes. You stabilized my crew. That was not intentional. Her voice softened just slightly. Nor was your boarding. She glanced toward the docking ring outside. Then back at me. You may still leave. The pause stretched. But we will not request it. The mining outpost rotated slowly outside the viewport. Safe. Ordinary. Uncomplicated. Behind me, the strike cruiser hummed. Not straining. Not overheating. Breathing evenly. Because I was here. The captain held my gaze. You steady my ship, she said quietly. And I do not surrender stability lightly. I exhaled slowly. The air felt warmer. But not oppressive. For the first time since boarding. It didn't feel wrong. It felt aligned. Frontier Sector Gamma was not quiet. It only pretended to be. We were 3 days beyond the mining outpost when long-range sensors lit up with something that did not belong to pirates. Too large. Too organized. Too confident. Dominion raiding formation, the chief of tactical said, her voice steady but tight. 5 cruisers. 2 carrier escorts. The holomap bloomed with red. The captain did not raise her voice. She didn't need to. Battle posture. The ship shifted beneath my feet. Not violently. Purposefully. I felt the core respond instantly, heat rising, power surging. This wasn't a minor pirate skirmish. This was a fleet engagement. I moved toward engineering without waiting for permission. No one stopped me. The hum deepened. Combat surge building fast. The old pattern, the aggressive spike, lurking just beneath the new stabilizers I'd installed. Primary weapons charging, tactical reported. Enemy targeting us first, the chief added. Of course they were. Dragon Woman strike cruiser. Brightest threat on the board. The first volley hit our shields. The impact rattled through the hull like a punch. The core spiked hard. Thermal output rising, the chief of thermal called. Hold surge at 70%, the captain ordered. We fired back. The bridge filled with golden light as our weapons carved through the nearest enemy cruiser. 1 down. 4 to go. The core surged again, higher this time. I adjusted the coil timing buffer. Preemptive coolant dispersion, I called. The chief mirrored my input instantly. No hesitation now. The ship responded like it understood the rhythm. Breathing with the surge instead of fighting it. Another impact. Shields flared. The third enemy cruiser broke formation and flanked. Starboard cannons charging, tactical warned. The deck vibrated violently. Heat climbed. Not unstable. But pushing. The captain stepped into the center of the bridge, issuing rapid-fire commands. Her voice felt like controlled flame. Focused. Precise. The ship obeyed. We banked hard. Weapons fired again. Second enemy cruiser shattered under concentrated strike. But the carrier escorts opened up with sustained beam fire. This wasn't a quick exchange. This was endurance. And endurance was where dragon ships used to suffer. The core temperature edged toward danger. Not catastrophic. But creeping. I felt it in my bones before the monitors flashed amber. 82% threshold, the chief warned. We cannot sustain this rate. You can, I said quietly. The captain's eyes flicked toward engineering. Explain. Shift to staggered surge. The chief's head snapped toward me. That reduces immediate output. By 5%. We need maximum firepower. You need longevity, I shot back. Another impact rocked the hull. Shields dipped. The captain's gaze locked onto mine through the holodisplay. Execute, she said. The chief adjusted the pattern. Instead of continuous maximum surge, the core pulsed in alternating peaks. High. Reset. High. Reset. The thermal curve flattened. Strain dropped. Weapon output dipped slightly. But remained lethal. The third cruiser fell. The fourth retreated. The carriers tried to break formation. Too late. The strike cruiser, no longer straining, no longer overheating, outlasted them. One by one, the red markers blinked out. Silence returned to the bridge. No warning alarms. No heat distortion rippling through the air. Just steady power. Breathing. The captain stood still for a moment. Then she turned toward engineering. I stepped back from the console. My hands were shaking slightly. Not from fear. From adrenaline. You reduced peak output, the chief said. But extended sustained capacity by 30%. I nodded. Humans call it pacing. The captain walked toward me. Her scales still glowed faintly from battle heat. You preserved my ship, she said. You preserved my crew. I shrugged weakly. You did the fighting. You allowed us to continue fighting. The bridge crew watched. Not as superiors. Not as subordinates. As something closer to equals. The ship settled into post-combat hum. Smooth. Even. Alive. We docked at the next secured outpost 2 days later. This time, I packed my tool case slowly. No rush. No panic. The captain met me at the airlock. You may disembark, she said. Yes, I replied. She studied me. You have no contractual obligation. No. You are free. I looked back down the corridor. At the faint warmth in the walls. At the subtle rhythm in the deck. At the crew moving through the ship, not tense. Not rigid. Aligned. The chief of thermal stood farther back, pretending not to watch. You call me an anchor, I said quietly. The captain's eyes softened slightly. You stabilize the storm. I glanced at the docking bay beyond the airlock. Ordinary ships. Ordinary people. Cool, sterile air. Predictable systems. Safe. Then I looked back at her. At the strike cruiser. At the ship that breathed fire, but no longer burned itself alive doing it. I boarded the wrong Starship, I said. Yes, she replied. I set my tool case down. But it turns out, I continued, it was the right mistake. For the first time since I'd met her. The Dragon Woman captain smiled fully. Welcome aboard, she said. Not as mechanic. Not as stowaway. but as something far stranger. The human who steadied a warship built of flame. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel out of place. I felt necessary.